If you've scrolled through a gym video in the last few months, you've seen it. Someone swinging a steel mace, this lopsided, top-heavy club that looks like it belongs in a museum, not a gym bag. Fitness brands are selling it right now as the newest breakthrough in functional strength. It is not new. Persian warriors were swinging a heavier wooden version of that exact tool 3,000 years ago, inside sunken stone gymnasiums built specifically to prepare men for hand-to-hand combat. The tool didn't come from a product lab. It came from a warrior culture that figured out something about the shoulder that most modern gyms still get wrong. By the end of this video, you'll know their entire system, not just the one tool everyone online is copying badly. The building was called a Zurkhaneh. In Persian, that translates directly to house of strength, not a gym, not a temple, something in between. Picture a sunken circular pit, dug slightly below ground level, topped with a low dome built that way on purpose, so the acoustics carried the drumbeat and the reciting poetry that guided every training session. This wasn't silent training. A single performer called a morsht sat above the pit on a raised platform, beating a drum and chanting verses from Persian epic poetry, setting the pace for every single exercise happening below him. The men training in that pit were called Pahlavans, warrior athletes. The system itself has a name, Varzesh-e-Bastani, the ancient sport. Historical accounts place its roots in Persian military and wrestling culture going back over 3,000 years, though the ritualized version practiced today took its current shape roughly 1,000 years ago. This wasn't recreational fitness. Training in the Zurkhaneh prepared men for two things: hand-to-hand combat, and a form of submission wrestling still practiced today called Koshti Pahlavani. Strength wasn't the goal by itself. Strength was the byproduct of preparing for a fight. In 2010, UNESCO added the Pahlavani and Zurkhaneh rituals to its list of intangible cultural heritage. That designation exists because this tradition never actually died. Zurkhanis are still standing and still training people across Iran today, an unbroken lineage running from ancient warrior prep straight into 2026. Everything you've seen labeled new in a fitness ad this year already happened inside that dome. Here's the part modern fitness marketing leaves out. The reason this training worked isn't mysticism, it's biomechanics. And it's the exact thing sports science rediscovered a few years ago and started calling rotational training. A barbell moves in a straight line. Up, down. A treadmill moves in a straight line. Forward, forward, forward. Almost every machine in a commercial gym trains one plane of motion, the sagittal plane, straight in front of your body. Human movement doesn't work that way. Combat doesn't work that way. A punch rotates through the hips and shoulder. A takedown rotates through the spine. Nothing about a real fight happens in a straight line. The Pahlavans trained with offset load tools, weights that were heavier on one end than the other. When you swing or press an offset load, your shoulder and your core can't just push in a straight line and be done with it. The weight wants to twist your wrist, rotate your shoulder, and pull your spine off center on every single repetition. Your stabilizer muscles, the small supporting muscles around the shoulder joint and through the obliques and deep core, have to fire constantly just to control the object, not just move it. That is precisely the training gap modern rotational training research has been pointing at for the last decade. Stabilizer strength doesn't develop from straight line lifting. And stabilizer weakness is one of the most common causes of shoulder injury in people who lift straight line weights for years without ever training rotation. The Pahlavans weren't reading exercise science journals. They were preparing for combat, where an unstable, rotating opponent is the only kind that exists. The training matched the demand. Modern commercial gyms optimized for something else entirely, moving the most weight in the safest, most predictable straight line possible, because that's what's easy to measure, easy to program, and easy to sell as a machine. Different goal, different tool, different result, especially in the shoulder. Here is the actual system, tool by tool, because the Meel everyone is now buying under the name Steel Mace is only one piece of it. Tool 1. The Meel. A large, heavy wooden club, thicker, longer, and significantly heavier than the Indian clubs that were adapted from similar traditions in the 1800s. Pahlavans swung pairs of these overhead and behind the back in continuous flowing arcs. sometimes for hundreds of repetitions in a single session. This is the direct ancestor of the steel mace sitting in gym bags right now. Same offset load, same rotational demand, different material. Tool 2, the Kabbadeh. An iron bow, strung with heavy chains instead of a bowstring, weighing anywhere from roughly 11 kilograms up to 50. Adjustable by adding or removing chain links or weighted discs. Pahlavans pressed and pulled it overhead in a rowing meets pressing motion that loaded the entire upper back and shoulder girdle simultaneously centuries before a cable machine existed to do the same job with a stack of steel plates. Tool 3, the song. A massive, flat wooden block shaped roughly like an ancient shield, with a hole cut through the center for a hand grip. Pahlavans lifted it from the floor, pressed it overhead, and lowered it behind the shoulders in a controlled motion one-movement training grip, posterior chain, and shoulder stability at the same time, using nothing but an oddly shaped block of wood and total body tension. Tool 4, the Takhteh, a wooden push-up board used for a specific 4-point push-up pattern that built explosive pressing power and drove the hands into an unstable base, training shoulder stability under load in a completely different way than a push-up on a flat, predictable floor. Notice what's missing from all 4: no barbell, no bench, no machine with a guided track. Every single implement trains grip, rotation, and stabilization in the same repetition. That combination is the exact gap in a typical modern gym split, where grip, rotation, and stabilization usually get zero dedicated training at all. You don't need a stone pit or a drum beat to use this system. Here's the direct substitute for each tool and a simple way to run it 3 days a week, matching the frequency that's worked in every system we've broken down on this channel. For the Meel, a single steel mace, starting at 10 to 15 pounds for most lifters. 3 sets of 8 controlled 360-degree swings per side, plus 3 sets of 8 of the 10 to 2 pattern. Start lighter than you think. The offset load makes a 15-pound mace feel nothing like a 15-pound dumbbell. For the Kabbadeh, a heavy resistance band anchored low, pulled into an overhead press bowl combination, 3 sets of 10. If you have access to a cable machine, a single arm high to low or low to high rotational pull gets you close to the same demand. For the sang, a single kettlebell or dumbbell lifted from the floor to an overhead press and lowered under control behind the head only if your shoulder mobility allows it, otherwise stop at full overhead lockout. 3 sets of 6 per side. For the Takhteh, push-ups performed with your hands on a push-up board, parallettes, or even 2 stacked yoga blocks, anything that creates an unstable elevated base. 3 sets to near failure. Run all 4 3 days a week. Rotational work first before any straight line lifting in the same session. Give it 2 weeks before judging it. Stabilizer strength doesn't show up as a number on a bar, it shows up as your shoulder handling load it used to complain about. Strength isn't a new invention. It's a rediscovery, over and over, by whoever's currently forgotten what already got solved. The steel mace in your gym bag has been swinging in a stone room under Persia for 3,000 years. The marketing is new. The tool isn't. Try the rotational pattern for 1 week and tell me in the comments what your shoulder notices that a straight barbell never touched. Subscribe. Next week we go back to another forgotten system nobody's talking about, and we're naming the exact tools again, not just the vague history.